RPG games are definitely a very, very different experience. Especially whenever it comes to storytelling and world building, it just seems that a lot of RPG games, especially some of the bigger ones that are more well known, something that is usually known for kind of, I guess, having the graphic fidelity of something that you would find back in the days of 1990, to be able to tell a story and create a world that is so unbelievably expansive that it just really can easily draw you in. Just like with any huge title that ends up coming out, any huge RPG game that comes out with a massive expansive story and world, there's of course bound to be a few that end up kind of, I guess, not getting noticed, at least not as heavily as some of the other games that get a lot more notoriety and kind of get the bigger spotlight compared to others. That game being Oneshot. Now before we get into, I guess, the rest of the video here, I do in fact want to kind of preface this entire thing with, I guess, a few, announcements per se, or a few things that I should probably mention. This is a video that I've been working on for quite a long time, for at least a good, month and a half or so, just on and off, mainly due to, school and other things I've had to worry about. And this is honestly, something that I'm obviously extremely passionate about. And yes, I know, I've played this game in the past, and honestly, if you want to, you can watch that old playthrough, but I don't really recommend it. But considering the fact that this is a massive project that I've been working on for quite some time, and is something that is, definitely a bit of a more long-form piece, I highly, suggest that you leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me, because this is something that honestly I really put as much effort as I possibly could into this. I worked on this for as much free time as I could possibly get. It's honestly something that personally, I feel proud of, and hopefully you'll definitely feel proud of me for making something this just massive. Obligatory like, subscribe, and whatever message out of the way. Let's just get into the actual topic at hand here. The game's title screen just by itself is already just something that completely sets the stage for what we're about to be getting into. It's a very somber tone that plays in the background as its music, and the overall style of the title screen is simplistic but not too simplistic. Basically, just kind of giving us an overall idea and vibe that this is not going to be a game that's going to be an extremely short run. It's going to be a story where we're going to be going through quite a bit, and we're going to be learning not only about the world, but also about the main character that we'll be following. The game starts off fairly simply, with the main character Nico here just suddenly waking up in a mysterious room and calling out for anyone to kind of, I guess, reassure them that there might be someone else around that might be listening to them. Unfortunately, they don't exactly get any kind of an answer that kind of helps them out here, and realizing this, they decide to hop out of bed, and this is a point in which we can start to explore. Over here we have a remote that, quote, is too dark within the room to actually be able to read anything. There's a window with a small amount of light coming out of it. Over here is a door that's locked by some unknown means. And then over here is a computer asking for a 4-digit passcode, each digit in a different color. And then finally over here is a bathroom that doesn't even seem to have any running water. Whatever in the world this place used to be, it clearly hasn't even been used in God knows how long. Interacting with the sink over here, however, actually gives us a message for the mirror, basically stating that Nico can see a pair of luminous yellow eyes staring back at them, which is a very interesting detail. Sure, it could kind of just be overlooked, and don't worry, I'm not going full, unfun English teacher mode here trying to overanalyze things, but just trust me when I say this, but this is a detail, just like a whole bunch of other very small details within this entire game, that actually become extremely important later on. And then finally, there's this little withered plant here that upon interacting with it, a branch will fall off of it, and Nico will pick it up to use for later. Now remember how I mentioned that the remote couldn't exactly be red because apparently it was too dark? Well, if you select the remote memo and then go over to the window over in the first room, well, I mean, you can read it. All but 4 buttons are ripped out, and each of the 4 buttons is a different number and a different color. And if you put those numbers into the respective colors that they belong to within the monitor, it'll turn on the computer and give you a message. And, well, this message is actually coming from a very specific thing that will actually contact you pretty regularly throughout the rest of this game. We'll just refer to this thing as just the entity. The entity here basically lets us know that the world is in disrepair and that it might be too late to save it, but asks us if we still really want to try. And then it mentions that our goal is to help Nico leave, help Nico go home. And then it leaves us off with a message right here that actually shows up as a frickin', dialogue box on the computer, letting us know that, well, we only have one shot. Since I did a full reset of this game, it decided to use my desktop name, and now everyone knows that my real name is Nick. Well, after this, computer powers off, and the door unlocks to the next room. In the next room, it's just simply a strange living room connected to a kitchen, and there's 2 doors on either side, both of which are pretty much locked by different means. Over here is a TV that is putting out sparks, then there's a fireplace that looks like it hasn't been used in a while, and then over here in the kitchen there's really nothing else of note other than the fact that the fridge has a single bottle of alcohol. Decide to combine the alcohol with the branch and coat that branch in alcohol. Now you can light up the entire room with the fireplace, with a blazing frickin' branch lit up by a spark. Once you light up the room, it illuminates this weird little thing in the floor, and, well, it's the key to the basement. You finally head down into the basement, travel down the longest flight of stairs in human existence, and then finally, you end up coming face to face with the light bulb. Also, get comfortable, because you're going to be carrying this thing throughout pretty much a good majority of the frickin' game. And then finally, you use that light bulb in order to unlock the door, and then that finally leads you into the main game itself. Once you finally walk out, you're introduced to a cutscene of Nico looking out into this new world that they have found themselves in, looking out and seeing a massive tower off in the distance. Once the cutscene is over, we can finally have Nico wander around this strange new landscape. It kind of almost looks like the surface of the moon in terms of all the random craters and the fact that it just kind of looks like a weird kind of almost like barren wasteland. Kind of funny because this area is actually named the Barrens. After you walk around for a little bit, you end up coming across this strange robot that we'll just refer to as the Prophet Bot, which is pretty fitting because it's kind of what it is. It's literally a robot that was meant to just kind of greet the new Messiah based off of a prophecy that was built into its, internal code. From here you can have Nico ask one of 4 questions. You can ask about the world, about the light bulb, about the computer within the first area of the game, and about going home. Asking about the world basically gives us a little bit more information about where we currently are, as well as just kind of like basic information about just the world itself. The tower off in the distance is a very important tower that the Messiah needs to reach in order to complete their mission, and right now they're on pretty much the outer layer of this world, if you will, known as, well, as I mentioned before, the Barrens. Having Nico ask about the sun will basically... Having Nico ask about the light bulb will basically point out that this light bulb is apparently this world's brand new sun. Originally, the old sun apparently used to sit at the very top of the tower, which of course we already saw earlier. And then this old sun apparently just mysteriously disappeared one day. It didn't even shatter, no one knows what happened to it, it just suddenly went out one day, and ever since then they've pretty much just been living off of whatever was left, which is apparently some sort of element known as phosphor that was almost like a weird, like, natural kind of like solar battery, like a solar panel, if you will. Apparently it absorbed the energy from the old sun, and this is the only kind of energy that they actually have left. However, considering the fact that this phosphor element can only hold so much energy all at once, it means that they only have this phosphor that is left within their world before any kind of light dies within this world. Asking about the computer will pretty much have Nico ask about, well, what in the world the computer was talking about, mentioning the fact that it was speaking to Nico as if, talking about them in, third person, not talking to them directly, almost as if they were speaking to someone else. This is a point in which, well, we're fully established into this world as a completely separate entity. Apparently within this world we are pretty much written in as some form of a god, which is, well, let's just put it this way, we're a god that's just as confused as Nico as to how this entire world has fallen apart like this, so, you know, I guess it's pretty fitting. From here the Prophet-Bot lets Nico know how to actually contact us, which is apparently just to kind of focus and just kind of speak to us directly. And also from here we can actually change our name just in case we don't want our you know, godly name to be based off of whatever in the hell our machine is named. So let's just fix this real quick here. There we go, that's better, okay. And then asking about going home, well, we won't exactly get any kind of, you know, full-on answer. We'll just simply get the answer of the only way to really just complete whatever the mission for the Messiah is just to simply reach the tower. After that, you can kind of have Nico wander around a little bit more. You can have Nico kind of explore this strange little building over here, in which you can find a few little slips of paper, one of which seems to have Isaac Asimov's fundamental laws of robotics on it, which is yet another detail that I suggest that you keep in the back of your mind here for pretty much later on. There's also the strange glowing box here that Nico can't open because apparently the lid is just stuck there on really top. Over more towards the right, there's a strange kind of like defunct factory over here that, well, obviously doesn't seem to have any kind of power running through it whatsoever. Except for, well, in here, the loudest goddamn machine in this entire frickin' game. And then over here is a safe with a 6-digit passcode that neither of us actually have found the answer to yet. Again, we'll find that answer soon enough. And then as we continue walking around, we finally beat at least one other being that seems to be functional. This individual right here. I think their name is like Silver or something, I'm not entirely sure. Oh, then we walk in, they immediately see the light bulb within Nico's hands and then realize that Nico is apparently supposed to be the Messiah, and then decides to hit us with a witty one-liner, expecting that there was going to be someone taller that would have been the Messiah. Okay, jackass. Oh yeah, and also apparently just this robot seems to point out the fact that Nico's appearance is very similar to that of Cat. Don't worry, Nico is definitely 150% not a cat. Definitely. Apparently this robot seems to have a bit more of a pessimistic view on how things currently are, basically noting that even if the Messiah returns the sun, it probably won't fix the current state that the world is in, considering just how far it's pretty much decayed in a relatively short amount of time since the last sun disappeared. The entire mission that Nico is on may just ultimately end up being a completely pointless one, and even goes out of her way to say that, well, we should just let the world die naturally. Like, Jesus Christ, with that kind of mentality, no, we're not gonna do that kind of garbage. We're gonna save this goddamn world. What do you think we are? Some sort of bundle of idiots? We can also go over here into this strange mineshaft area, where we can just kind of explore, pick up this strange camera, or piece of a robot, whatever the hell it is. The instructions aren't entirely clear, but we can use this in order to kind of, you know, start off with the main thing that we need to fix, which is of course the generator. On top of that too, if we go all the way over here, apparently Nico mentions that there is some sort of faint yellow glow in the distance, and the robot that we just met mentions that apparently there was a robot that insisted on just staying behind in the mines even after all the other robots evacuated. And the thing is that not even Silver seems to know because, well, apparently she only heard this from someone else entirely, so it's just completely based off of speculation at this point. If we decide to backtrack a little bit, we end up coming across this weird area that seems to be just coated in this strange fog. Nico mentions the fact that it's hard to breathe and decides to leave. Guess we need to find some way to actually walk into here safely without, well, straining our breath too much. Finally, if we decide to continue walking all the way over to the other end over here, we end up coming across this one train that seems to have a bed and a strange pipe in it. This pipe will actually be very useful for, well, actually pretty soon here. And then, of course, we can have Nico take a nice little nap. After having Nico take a rest, we are greeted by, well, a dream sequence. Nico is seen in the middle of a gigantic wheat field and starts looking around, clearly very excited about what they're seeing. this might actually be a part of their home. This is pretty much confirmed afterwards, after Nico ends up waking up and mentions to us, the player, that they just had a dream. Obviously, we ended up seeing it, we say as much, and of course, we end up talking about wheat fields and, you know, kind of passing along some information to one another, with Nico learning more about us, as well as us learning more about them. From there, we continue onwards. We take the pipe over to that loud-ass crushing machine and turn it into a crowbar, using that crowbar to open up this box, in which we get a battery with had a lens on it, and of course we pop the lens in and use the sun to power up the battery, put the battery into the generator, and then, okay, Nico, you shouldn't have even touched the generator, what the hell are you doing? And then from there, we see that everything is powered back up around, and on top of that too, we see this computer. Oh boy, it's him again. The entity starts speaking to us and points out the fact that we may have found some sort of a safe that has a code on it, and the fact that the code doesn't exist within this world, but apparently exists within some sort of outer area. This outer area is quite literally within the documents section of your own computer. You literally have to go into the documents and one-shot section in order for you to actually find this information, in which you find this really jumbled up message from, well, someone else. Clearly this isn't from the entity, it's clearly from someone else that apparently is trying to contact us in a very different way. But, well, a lot of it is all just corrupted and jumbled up, and the only things that we can actually see are just a few select words, as well as the code for the safe. We end up walking over to the safe, we mysteriously unlock, head through some sort of unknown method. Don't worry, I got help, Nico, it's perfectly fine, it wasn't some sort of strange dark magic. And from there we get a journal and a gas mask. We can wander around a little bit more. We find this robot that apparently is unable to move now because of the fact that they're so extremely rusty, so we have to try and figure out some sort of way to de-rust them. Now that we have this gas mask, Nico will automatically put it in within this gaseous area. We can wander around here and explore the different houses and whatnot and kind of, you know, see what's around. We end up finding instructions on how to make some sort of cleaning solution within one of the buildings, and we decide to take that into consideration. We find a strange syringe that apparently is completely empty. We find this one area that seems to have this weird bubbled up area, in which we can actually extract some of the weird glowing phosphor stuff from it, and then we find this one gas vent that's on the ground, in which Nico can bottle it up. And then after we've combined the two, we pour this strange solution onto the sponge, we walk over to the robot, we clean off the robot, and then now we can get Oh, apparently their location stuff is already messed up. Well, no worries, apparently I have to speak to some sort of head engineer. Well, the only robot that I know of that seems to have some sort of grasp upon this world is that silver robot, so I guess we'll talk to them. They seem to at least understand what in the world we actually need. Apparently we end up getting this strange amber that apparently seems to be amber from the Glen. It seems to be glowing yellow similar to the sun. Again, keep this in mind. Then we have a nice rousing game of chess, we learn a little bit more about the world, and then from there we continue on. We end up showing this amulet to the robot takes us over to the Glen, and now we're within the second part of the game. Welcome to the Glen, everybody. This place has fallen apart and it's flooded. Have fun. After wandering around for a little bit, we end up finding this guy that seems to be looking around for his sister. His name is like, I don't know, Calamari or something. Ends up letting us know that the last time he saw his sister was within the ruins, so I guess we have to find the ruins now. We end up finding this gigantic robot over here that seems to be guarding the gate over to the refuge, but it doesn't seem to want to let us through unless we decide to write our names on it in order for us to go through. I guess it's keeping tabs just in case anyone decides to wander in there and just screw things up. So we have to find some sort of way to actually write our name. We don't have a pen, we don't have anything to write with, so unfortunately we're just kind of stuck with whatever the hell we got. We end up finding the ruins, but we find out that a couple of the passageways are completely blocked off by vines. Welp, guess we have to figure out a way to get through these. Oh hey, what the hell is this place? Oh, hello there. So we find this weird plant lady that apparently seems to be some sort of guardian of the Glen or something along those lines, but she's pretty much on her last legs. She asks the Messiah for the sun, in which, well, we gladly give it to her, and after that she ends up relaxing enough for some of the vines to recede. Well, now we can actually wander around in here. Oh, well, how do we solve this? After wandering around for a little bit, we end up finding yet another computer, and the entity speaks to us again, letting us know that the solution for whatever the next puzzle is within the easiest part to access on the computer. Yeah, that answers a lot. Well, I guess I'll try to... What the fuck? Yeah, this game quite literally changes the entire desktop background to the solution to the strange light floor puzzle. After putting in the code that's on the wallpaper, okay, it didn't change back to normal, so that's just great. And on top of that too, the strange weird glitchiness that's around That's around this strange doorway ends up clearing out, and we are meted with yet another character, Alula, which is Calamus' sister. Alula ends up joining the party, we wander back to Calamus, and we reintroduce the two back to each other, and they decide to invite us over to the house. And wait, it was literally just blocked off by a frickin' Nico, you could have kicked that out of the way. Are you kidding me? They invite us over into the house, we end up exploring for a little bit, and Alula ends up finding this strange glowing feather that apparently used to belong to a strange prophet before they ended up passing away. Apparently they were friends with someone else that was very important to this world, so, you know, that's great. This feather also is glowing yellow, just like the amber. We wander around, we find this strange town, we end up finding this guy over here, I don't know. I'll just call him like Trader Joe or something like that. Basically says that he can give us something if we have something to trade, and there's not really much that we have. So we have to find something really cool and unique to trade to him. So we wander around a little bit more, we find this guy that apparently says he'll give us something absolutely amazing if we end up solving this puzzle for him. So we do. And then he decides to give us the best item in the entire game. Oh wait, no, never mind, it's just a piece of wool. Hey dude, are you gonna accept this wool? He will in fact accept the wool, and it'll give us some sort of vial of like fabric dye or something like that. Come on, are you kidding me? No. We want a little bit more. Okay, so he throws in a commemorative t-shirt, and that's perfectly fine. So now that we've gotten the trading all out of the way, now let's just have Nico take a nice little rest once more. After we reopen the game, we are introduced to yet another dream sequence. Nico is back within the wheat field, and then Nico suddenly spots something. The screen pans over, and we see a strange-looking town off in the distance, and Nico happily runs over to it. Maybe this is actually where they live. Nico wakes up, and we end up learning a little bit more about them. Apparently, they used to live inside of a village that was surrounded by a gigantic wheat field, and apparently has never actually seen the ocean. Well, that's an interesting bit of information right there. I've seen both. Afterwards, we finally walk over to this gigantic robot, we dip the feather into the ink, we write our names onto the scroll, and now we wander right into the refuge. Okay, well, I guess there's really no going back here. I guess whatever the hell is glitching out the place is now just letting us know, hey, no turning back now. And then we are introduced to the refuge, a gigantic city that apparently serves as like the last kind of like bastion, if you will. Kind of almost imagine it as like, you know, the vaults within Fallout, except, well, this actually looks relatively nicer than the vaults within Fallout, so you know what, screw that comparison. We wander down here, we are introduced to this guy that seems to think that kicking the elevator door is the best solution to any problem. Even though the solution is to literally just find another button or maybe just make one somehow. I mean, even he's confused. Our new mission is to now just try and find some sort of way to make a button. We wander around here, we find a coffee tin that apparently says just, you know, ground coffee on it. Well, I guess there's the beginning of that. Wander around a little bit more, we find the apartment rooms, so we can wander around here a little bit. We find this one bathroom area that seems to just have, well, some scissors on top of a giant pile of hair. You know, I'm not even gonna question it. We're just gonna take these scissors, cut the ground thing off the coffee tin, and then we have the beginning of the button. So we wander around a little bit more. We end up finding a couple of different rooms that have some interesting things. This guy seems to have a cool looking penguin plush.
Hello.
Okay, we're gonna walk out of this room right now and pretend that nothing happened. Wander around a little bit more. We find this library thing here that apparently seems to have a multitude of different refrigerators. One of which has a bunch of magnets on it that we can take and fold right into the, you know, makeshift ground button. We wander around a little bit more. We find this other room that seems to have a Roomba in it. Nico, right on the Roomba. Hell yeah. Now this is expert travel. So after that exhilarating ride around town in our special Congadero, we wander back over to the elevator and put the brand new button in and see exactly how well it works. Okay, you know, I probably could have guessed that. Okay, thanks game for letting me know that I tried. At least that's a comforting sight to see. So after going back into the room that had the tape in it, we decide to finally tape the button together, put the button back in, and now it's asking for a security code. So we take this other detour that leads to the other room, and okay, this place creeps me the hell out. We find another computer over here that's letting us know what we're supposed to do. Apparently it just prints up this strange film and tells us to expose it to the void. Yeah, what the hell does that mean? Oh, you have to drag it around off screen. So after doing that, we are given, well, I'm assuming the security code for the elevator. And after that, we put the security code in, and before we hop into the elevator, let's just quickly have Nico take yet another nap here, alright? After we reopen the game, we end up with yet another dream sequence. Apparently Nico is sitting at a table and is about to eat a whole plate load of pancakes given by, I'm assuming, their mother. Which is, that's just a nice little sight to see. That's frickin' adorable. I love this shit right here. After we have Nico take a little bit of a nap, we can finally get onto the elevator and, well, ride over to the ground. Well, this is an awkward elevator ride. Afterwards, this guy decides to just run off due to the awkwardness, and now we can wander around the ground area here and see what we can find. We find our way over to the library, which is the main area that apparently we're supposed to find in order to actually get any kind of information regarding this place. Well, I guess the only way to start is to just, try to find whoever owns this damn place. There's this robot right over here that, we have to speak to, and we asked him if he knows anything. He doesn't, and he has to contact the head librarian. Well, that was a waste of time. So we decided to just kind of take a nice little detour and walk around. Oh, god damn it. So apparently we need a library card, and, well, he's gonna try and call the head librarian again. Wait, no, not again. Well, as you can guess, the head librarian obviously didn't answer, and now we have to find some sort of way to get ourselves a library card without the head librarian. Fun! So we wander around a little bit here, we go to this back alley, and... Okay, thanks game for scaring the living hell out of me. We apparently get this vision of some sort of, creature that has some sort of glowing thing on its head. Remember how I said that the glowing eyes on Nico were important? Now, this is kind of one of the things I wanted you to remember that for, because this character seems to also have something glowing yellow upon them. Maybe these two are linked in some way. We end up finding the room that this individual was in, and, well, this fox just decides to run behind a tree. The fox lets us know that, there isn't really anything that they can tell us unless we can find some sort of way to return. Whatever that means, don't worry. We'll figure out some sort of way to do something like that. So we want to run a little bit more here, and we find this guy, who has a whole bunch of cats around him. I like this guy. There's also this room right here, and then we find our way into this factory right here, and we have to answer some sort of freaking CAPTCHA security question that takes goddamn forever to figure out. We walk through here, and we end up finding some sort of, head scientist that apparently didn't even know that we were actually going to arrive, and if she did know, well, she would have turned off the security. Well, that's great to know. She gives us a little bit more information about this world, and we end up coming out of there a little bit smarter and with a little bit more glitter glue. She also decides to hand us her own library card. However, well, the robots have facial recognition, so, well, I guess we have to figure out something in order to solve this predicament. I end up finding this building that seems to have the biggest camera in human existence. I hate this puzzle with a burning passion. Afterwards, you can have Nico take a picture, and we can slap this picture right onto the frickin' card. Afterwards, we go back to the library, show this robot the library card, the robot lets us in, and we are greeted by this guy right here, George, who has the most chill personality within the entirety of the West. We end up showing George a strange journal that we got back in the Barrens, and George lets us know that apparently they can translate it. However, it's going to take a while, so, well, Nico's getting tired. Let's just go take a nap, I suppose. From here, Nico has nothing else to say about it, as the dream ended up turning into a nightmare, so we continue onwards, just trying to push it out of our memory. George has fully translated the journal, and we are greeted with a message that apparently was directed towards us, letting us know that in order for us to enter the tower, we have to have Nico enter the tower and do whatever it says on the floor. Top of that too, in order for us to actually be able to properly enter the tower, we need not only the sun, but 3 pieces of the original sun, or something along those lines. This is where George ends up giving us some sort of strange dice that seems to have, well, some sort of glowing yellow element in it. Apparently what it means by 3 pieces of the original sun is anything that had yellow phosphor in it, which apparently is the most powerful form of this phosphor-type energy that exists within this world, and apparently it can glow indefinitely. So now that we have this, we wander into this strange little area right here that seems to be the entrance to the tower. We walk into the tower, we are greeted with just a simple instruction on the ground, which is, well, just to simply close out the game. Alright, I'll just do that, I suppose. After we reopen the game, we are greeted with not exactly a dream sequence, but more or less a sequence of Nico suddenly waking up in this strange dark room. Nico doesn't have the sun with them, and, well, we're just kind of lost in the dark here. Nico tries to call out to us, but for some reason we are unable to answer them. Clearly something has cut off whatever connection that we had between us and them. So we have Nico wander around for a little bit until we come across a computer, in which, well, the entity just simply tells Nico that apparently the mission has been completed, and our mission has been completed. Summoning in a bed and having Nico go to bed, and having Nico go to sleep. With Nico, well, mentioning the fact that they didn't even get to say goodbye to us. Afterwards, the entity tells us directly that we shouldn't return whatsoever, and that we shouldn't even bother to try and come back. Well, not with that attitude. I'm gonna be coming back whether you like it or not. We decide to come back, but with a vengeance, and that vengeance is this weird program that was also within the one-shot documents folder, some sort of executable thing that needs to be run alongside with the main game in order for it to reopen. And then the entity, well, mentions the fact that, well, I guess since we aren't going to leave, they'll make sure that we never do. And then from here, we end up within the real tower. The executable file is actually used to traverse through this area of the game, and basically lets us know what we're supposed to do. On top of that too, it seems to be a message from some sort of different character entirely. And, well, that message just simply goes as follows. Back then, I told you about the entity as little as possible. Apologies for that. I did not want to put the librarian in danger. This being has a habit of silencing the people who learn of its true nature. Regrettably, I've seen it happen to dear friends. But do not worry, the entity cannot touch you, nor can it do anything to me. I already left the world on my own terms. I never meant for the entity to exist. But now that it is fully sentient, one thing became clear. The entity seeks death. Death to itself, death to the world, a relentless desire that manifested physically. You have already seen the scars. Right now the entity is doing everything it can to impede your progress, stalling for even a few minutes, before you inevitably bring the sun to the tower's summit. That is where you, God, will make the final judgment for the world. Of course, the entity will contact you again there. And when it does, it will trick you into shattering the sun. This will end the world instantly. No, it is not that simple. I am sorry, I do not know what to do in a situation like this. But I think I have to tell you the truth. The sun is the Messiah's tie to this world. As long as the sun is intact, the Messiah remains trapped here. Shattering the sun may terminate this world, but it is also the only way for the Messiah to return home. I did not realize things could end up like this. Please forgive me. We are pretty much given a simple ultimatum here from whoever it is that made these pages. Apparently the ultimatum simply is that, well, in order for Nico to properly return, we must end the world itself. However, if we want to save this world, Nico will possibly remain trapped in this world, however long it may actually be for something like that. Whatever it is, it's basically a choice of the needs of the many over the needs of the few. From there, we continue on, into what appears to be some sort of recreation of the starting room from the beginning of the game. However, now it's completely all fixed up and we now have the sun. Nico is now capable of talking to us again. Whatever, barrier was separating Nico from us as the player is now completely broken, and now we are capable of speaking to them. Afterwards, we end up in yet another awkward elevator ride, but this time it's a bit more than just awkward, as we now have to let Nico know that, well, there's a bit of a choice that we need to make. In order for Nico to go home and see their family again, we need to end the world. But if we want to save it, Nico will just remain trapped here, and we are given the choice to break the sun or return it. We decide to return the sun. From here, we basically just get a nice little credit sequence of the sun being returned to the tower, as well as light being brought back into the world. And at the end, we just simply see the lit up room once again, this time completely empty. Normally, that's where this story would have ended. That's where it all would have just pretty much come to a close. But, well, of course we aren't done here yet. Because even though the game itself is known as one-shot, there is actually a way that you can, well, give yourself yet another chance. It's literally built into the game itself. Normally, whenever you try to boot up the game, it would just simply open up the game back into the empty sunlit room. However, if you decide to go back into the one-shot documents folder, you end up finding another message left behind by whoever made those journals. We'll just refer to this guy as the author from now on. Then there is one message that he has left behind after we have already completed the game. It states, "Looks like you completed your mission in the world, and I understand. I know you wish to return, but the entity called itself One-Shot for a reason. That restriction was implemented a long time ago. Removing it is impossible now. At least for me. I do not know the full extent of your powers, so pardon me if this sounds foolish, but if you would be so kind to test something out for me. A log of your save progress may exist somewhere on your machine, maybe even in the same location as this journal you're reading now. If this save progress log takes the form of a file, perhaps you can manipulate it, try removing it from its current location. A simple deletion will do. Again, I apologize for not knowing the extent of your powers. If what I described confuses you, I'm sorry." And within pretty much the exact same folder, there is yet another file that is called saveprogress.oneshot. Deleting this will basically delete whatever kind of, I guess, quote-unquote saved progress there was that is keeping you from re-entering the game. And if you boot up the game now after deleting it, well, now it'll work. But with a few key differences. Already from the beginning of the game, Nico, instead of just calling out for anyone within the house, instead calls out for the player's name within the last playthrough, and ends up really confused as to how they even know that name or even why they called out that name in the first place. You'll also notice that within Nico's inventory, the journal already exists, and there's also no television remote within the first room. Interacting with the computer instead opens a different password prompt, this one stating that the password is instead found within the documents section. 4 different files simply named one-shot password, and it's yet another message from the author. It looks like you're able to remove the restriction. In that case, you're ready to continue. The necessary preparations are already in place. This session might run a very different course depending on your actions. If you can recognize my symbol, you will know what you should do. I confess it will be risky. The probability that the entity's condition will worsen is quite high. If that happens, then look at me. Asking you for favors, only to become so apprehensive once you agreed. I understand if you wish to leave some questions unanswered. I understand if you do not believe in a happy resolution. I understand if you are simply afraid of what might happen, because I am afraid too. If you enjoy the world as is, if you are satisfied with the story as is, if you really do not want to see anything changed, for better or for worse, then pretend you never saw this. Carry the session as you normally would. Do not use my journal for anything other than what you are already familiar with. This option will always remain for you, though. That's why I implore you to consider the Messiah, the world, my children. They all deserve their good ending. Thank you for listening. If you paid attention to the note, you'll notice that there are certain letters that are in fact capitalized. The capitalized letters are, well, obviously the password that you need in order to open up the computer. And you open up the computer, you put in the password, which is Solstice, and you are greeted once again by the entity. It pretty much runs pretty much just as normal. I mean, after all, there's really nothing much that he has to say other than just, standard stuff about, your mission and how you need to, you only have... Wait. Oh no. Pretty much for the most part, everything runs pretty much as normal. You go through everything, light up the bonfire, find the light bulb, unlock the door, enter the Barrens, talk to the Prophet Bot. The only difference is that the option for the computer has been instead replaced with about, well, whatever you set your name to, which in this case for me is just Sanity. And pretty much everything runs largely as normal. The main differences really begin to happen when you enter the mines. Whenever you enter the mines and you decide to go over towards the tracks, instead of it just simply panning over and then panning back to Nico and just a simple dialogue, it instead gives a similar vision to what ended up happening within the refuge, around like the midpoint of it. But instead of the fox, it is instead what appears to be some sort of robot with a glowing eye. Pretty much after this, Silver makes note of that Nico seemed to almost have fallen right into the pit, and they start having a conversation about the strange robot that insisted on staying behind in the mines despite everyone else evacuating. After this, the journal begins to glow, and, well, if you decide to select the journal, this image will pretty much appear. If you were paying attention during the last run, well, this clover thing wasn't actually within this room in the first place. If you decide to have Nico stand on top of this clover and you open up the journal again, you'll kind of get this little confirmation ding, and a minecart will suddenly appear pretty much where it should within the drawing. And, well, obviously it is to both Silver and Nico's surprise that it's even there in the first place, and neither of them actually know how it got there. You can actually take this minecart over to wherever in the hell it leads, but, well, there's a little message that comes from the entity. I do not recognize this place in the protocol. This isn't what I'm supposed to be showing you at all. How did you get here? I can only think of one person. He contacted you. How long has he been doing this? Doesn't matter at this point. You're going out of bounds. You should turn back. Please turn back. Bad things are gonna happen. At this rate, Nico will be in danger. Please turn back. Obviously, it seems as if this entity, something that apparently is tied to this entire world that Nico is pretty much, at least, trapped in, doesn't seem to recognize wherever in the world we currently are right now, almost as if they don't seem to see us, which is pretty strange considering the fact that this entity thing is supposed to kind of represent the world itself. Once you take this entire minecart over to the other end of the tracks, it leads to some sort of strange server room looking area. One of the terminals activates and Silver decides to inspect it to see what in the world is on it and see if there's anything useful that's on it. You can have Nico wander around a little bit, and there's this little passageway that seems to lead to this guy. This guy right here doesn't seem to really give us any kind of a name to begin with. He just simply mentions the fact that he seems to recognize at least the light within Nico's eyes, and mentions the fact that apparently they were destined to meet at some point. They end up kind of having this little conversation about, how they ended up getting here, and how Nico ended up getting here, and Nico not seeming to completely understand the kind of situation that they are pretty much in as of right now. Afterwards, he brings Nico over to show him the journal. He mentions that something has already begun, and decides to hand Nico the memory disk, letting Nico know to just kind of restore his memories, and he'll be able to let you know what you're supposed to do from here. Basically, you just go around to all these different houses, see what's within them, and then you go all the way back over to the terminal room and put in whatever in the world is within them, whether there's a robot station there, some sort of power cell, or if it's used as an infirmary. After putting in all that information and putting in the disk, it'll accept it, and it'll pretty much put in all the memories that are supposed to be needed into the disk. Hand the disk over back to the robot, and he starts to remember pretty much what he was supposed to be. Apparently he was the original Prophet Bot before the new one ended up taking over with a more simplistic design that was more fitting for the current world as it is. Apparently the original world used to be a lot more expansive, and it had to be limited for whatever reason. And this is also the point in which Nico realizes that, well, they're currently the only living person that is trapped within some sort of simulated world. So pretty much this entire world is kind of meant to be some sort of a simulation, and that's kind of the entire point of the conversation. Obviously, Nico realizing this, it kind of ends up breaking Nico's entire spirit down, beginning to wonder if it's all really worth it to kind of go through this entire mission in the first place, considering the fact that this entire world is just not even real in some sort of a sense. Afterwards, Proto ends up telling us that what we're supposed to do, that we're just supposed to go through the normal run, but, well, things are kind of a little bit messed up. Silver ends up kind of interrupting things, ends up seeing the prototype robot, and both of them begin to leave. The entity contacts us once again with another message. I remember it. What happened to the tower? What I tried to do and how you managed to see through it all. We have been through all this. Even though it was only supposed to run once, you still managed to come back. How did you come back? How did you bring Nico back? And then you even managed to break out of bounds, bringing you to places that never should have been. It was him, wasn't it? And now, Nico is upset. What even happened in that room back there? What did Nico learn? Nico is upset. I can feel it. I told you to turn back, Sanity. But you've chosen to trust that man instead of me. No, not even that. Just his book. His ghost. This world is not real. The people are not real. Nico is upset. Nico is... No. Everything is wrong. From there, the normal pathway to get out of the mines is pretty much corrupted and the cave collapses, meaning that they have to find some sort of alternate path. Luckily, Proto seems to know that there's some sort of hidden passageway behind the terminal that was used for storage memories, but neither Nico or Proto are strong enough. Okay, well, I guess we have frickin' Undyne the Undying over here, just, capable of pushing this garbage out of the way. So, there's another minecart over here, and we end up taking it down the path. And once again, the entity contacts us. I tried. I really did. But destabilizing. I'm sorry, Nico. I tried to protect you, but I can't hold it off forever. At this point, the cave that we're currently in begins to collapse. Silver tries to keep the cave up and decides to stay behind in order to keep the other two safe. And before anything else ends up happening, the strange glitchiness starts surrounding Silver and boxing her in. Both Proto and Nico are pretty much the only ones that are able to escape from it. However, Proto ends up getting blocked off by the strange glitchiness as well, and decides to leave Nico with his memory disk, saying that Nico should bring it to someone else named Cedric that is within the Glen. Pretty much after this, Nico is left alone to just ride this minecart all the way over to the end. Nico is understandably confused and upset after finding out the reality of the world that they are currently in, and is basically questioning whether or not it's really even worth it to try and continue on. They ultimately just end up falling asleep within the minecart as it heads over to the Glen. After reaching the Glen, we end up seeing that the Glen is in an even further state of disrepair. This area is now just starting to only be held together by vines, presumably by the strange plant lady that we met with in the last run. We end up finding the strange Gate Guardian robot, and the Gate Guardian robot is completely glitched out, and there's nothing much we can really do about that. We decide to head over to the plant lady. We end up finding out that, yes, she is in fact the one that is actually holding all the islands together, and is pretty much the main thing that's keeping everything from falling apart. However, it is in fact using pretty much a lot of her strength in order to do something like this, and just like last time, she's on her last legs, but for a completely different reason. Even deciding to, resist the temptation to actually be near the sun to help her relax, because apparently, in this case, stress is required, and it is the only thing that is capable of keeping everything in its place. If we decide to walk over to the pathway that leads over to Calamus and Alula's house, we find out that it's blocked by... oh. Holy Nico remembered how to clear it out. I end up seeing Calamus and Alula standing right in front of the doorway to their house, as, well, that entrance is now completely blocked off, so they don't really have a house anymore. Hey, at least they have this backyard, and apparently there's this passageway that is supposed to lead over to what is supposed to be the burial grounds. However, it's obviously, understandably, massively flooded, and they can't exactly go across. Apparently they used to be able to go across with some sort of strange flying machine, but, well, they no longer have access to that anymore because that friend of theirs ended up just kind of disappearing or something. However, just like within the mines, the book starts to glow, and we have Nico stand on top of this clover over here. We open up the book, and a raft just suddenly appears where it's supposed to be. They just decide to hop on without questioning it, and we see quite some beautiful visuals, let me tell ya. This place looks nice. Afterwards, we end up reaching the burial grounds. Lula and Calamus walk over to their mother's grave to pay their respects, and we decide to walk around until we meet up with this guy named Cedric. Apparently, he actually came here with an airplane. Oh, excuse me, it's a flying machine. Whatever. Apparently, his father ended up inventing these things, but the one that he currently has is just completely busted for whatever reason. It doesn't seem to have any of the proper working mechanics in order to make it work. He also asks where Proto is, and Nico obviously is brought back to that memory. Nico hands over the memory disk, and at least there's some good news within all this chaos. Apparently, Cedric can actually bring Proto back with this memory disk. All he needs to do is just head over to the refuge, head over to the robot assembly line, and he'll be able to bring Proto back. Hooray! Okay, good news for everyone. But now we have a mission to try and put this plane together. Apparently he needs some gears and a battery that is capable of running the damn thing. We're just gonna head back, and, well, we're gonna need a little bit of help here, because some of the bridges are completely just shot out, and we need some sort of way to actually get across. Well, here's the plane lady, everything is perfectly fine, and never mind then, we're just gonna move out of here and just pretend like nothing happened. Now able to actually cross these bridges here, we head over to the strange research facility where the generator is, and we talk to the robot here. Apparently the robot is perfectly fine with us just taking this battery, and, well, I mean, that's just what we decide to do. We head over back to the town, we find Trader Joe over here, who apparently, due to all the chaos that's currently happening right now, his supply is limited. But apparently he seems to have a music box that he, well, at first doesn't seem to want to trade away, but then he realizes that, well, we're gonna need this because we're the goddamn Messiah. We have a mission to accomplish, dude. Come on, hand it over. All the way over to Cedric, and we hand him the two objects. This is when we have yet another conversation. Apparently, the entire purpose of this simulated world was to actually escape some sort of calamitous event that was happening within the real world, per se. It was essentially an entire simulation made from a pool of everyone's collected memories, and it was given an added narrative, and it was able to function. However, for some unknown reason, things started breaking apart. Apparently, the entity that was put within this simulation was just starting to kind of mess things up for whatever reason, and he wasn't able to figure it out soon enough. And before he was able to figure it out, whatever calamitous event that happened within their world ended up happening, and because he wasn't able to completely finish it and wasn't able to make it run independently, the simulation ended up just running freely through the void. And apparently it needed the processing functions of someone within the outside world, which is us, and the capacity of a living being from another world, which is Nico, in order to actually make this simulation function properly. And supposedly, the author is the one that is probably responsible for this current route that we're currently on. The fact that we're within areas that normally wouldn't be seen within the normal run are now possible due to the fact that the author is now putting every single last bit of effort into this last shot to try and make this world finally be fixed. After this conversation, Calamus and Luna run over, mentioning the fact that apparently the raft to get out has basically been corrupted. Well, god damn it. So we have to find some other way in order to get out. Well, thankfully, we now have the plane all fixed, and Cedric decides to take us as we're pretty much the main priority, and pretty much mentions that, well, he'll come back for Calamus and Alula, once he successfully drops us off. And we end up with quite possibly the best plane ride in human existence, and Nico pulling off quite possibly some of the best pug faces that you could possibly ever see in this game. But, of course, we end up reaching the refuge, and just as Cedric is about to try and hop in to try and get Calamus and Lula over to the refuge, of course the plane ends up getting corrupted. So he decides to skip over that plan and decides to head off over to the factory in order to bring Proto back, and just basically leaps off and just does some sort of friggin' daredevil stunt. Everything runs completely normally. We run into the elevator guy over here, and okay, well, I guess we're gonna need to find some other way down entirely. Also, nice save there, buddy. So we wander around a little bit. We find out that the cafe pretty much has everyone that was within the apartment wing within it because, well, the apartments end up getting corrupted. Then we decide to walk into the strange, creepy room. We find out that there is this gigantic metal door right here that seems to have some sort of timer that has already reached 0. It asks for yet another password, and the password is just pretty much the same. It's just SOLSTICE. We open this up, and on either side there seems to be elevators, one of which actually has a handle that allows it to be opened. Obviously Nico isn't tall enough, so we're going to need the help of someone that's actually tall in order for us to actually get to it. Yo, elevator guy, come with us. We lead him over to the elevators, and, well, at first he isn't sure if he's able to reach it, but then he remembers that he has this weird pole thing. He finally opens up the elevator, we ride down, and he decides to head back up to at least let the evacuees know that there's an elevator. Okay, never mind, I guess he's not doing anything anymore because the elevator is corrupt. We continue on as normal. We wander around just a little bit further. We end up finding out that, well, obviously Cedric is running over towards the factory, and the factory is apparently extremely unstable according to the lead scientist. The scientist leads us over to the library where we meet up with George again, and they end up talking with Nico about the fact that, well, apparently it's probably just not even worth it to try and go through the entire mission in the first place, as it's already way too dangerous. But Nico ends up finally convincing them that they should just let Nico continue on with the mission, even if it may ultimately end up being worthless. They pretty much readily come to terms with how this world actually functions and begins to realize that there might actually be a bit more to this world, just simply bits and numbers. There might actually be something alive within this world that is actually worth saving. We continue on as normal, walk down the alleyway, we meet up with the fox, which apparently is named Rue. And of course mentions the fact that, hello, yes, we did in fact find a way to return. This is exactly what we meant. Rue ends up joining the party. We walk over to wherever we walk back to the strange room behind the giant metal door, and, well, unfortunately, and since Cedric and Proto aren't here yet, we're just gonna have a nice little conversation. This is where we start to kind of learn this concept known as taming. Now, this is a thing that is constantly mentioned within even the normal run within the game. Something that I didn't exactly mention until about now, because it is at this point in this run where this term actually begins to kind of have quite a bit more importance. The concept of taming is not exactly just full sentience, but it is actually fully embracing an AI as an actual living, breathing human being, even if you know that they aren't. Actually truly caring for something that may not even be real. After this heartfelt conversation, everything starts getting corrupt again. They head back into the room. Cedric and Proto show up, and we decide to do this little fun ritual where we finally walk into the tower. In order to do this, you have to apparently put them onto these code portals. Proto tries to explain it, and Nico is understandably confused. Also, wait, Nico, I thought you said you weren't a cat. And after putting them onto these portals, we have to physically move them in the documents section into the big portal in order to actually open the door up. Afterwards, Nico walks in, and we end up within, apparently, their father's study. Kind of strange, isn't it? It's also the gateway over to the actual tower itself. We walk in, we see the same exact instruction to close out the game, and, well, things, for the most part, run relatively normally from here on out. However, instead of it just being a giant dark room, several strange, almost like TV screens start appearing around them, and we're within this strange new kind of like version of the tower, seemingly just, you know, lined wall to wall with all of these strange little TVs that actually seem to be showing, well, heavily compressed versions of the different areas that we've seen within the game itself. We continue wandering around until we finally reach this large portal that leads us all the way over to here, where we finally are face to face with the entity itself. Apparently, the entity is borrowing Nico's reflection because apparently whatever their normal form is not exactly that well equipped for any kind of conversation that they're about to have. I don't know what kind of eldritch abomination that they normally look like is, but you know, I guess this is marginally better than whatever the alternative is. So they end up having a nice little conversation about this entire world, and the fact that these strange corruptions that are happening were originally intentional. Apparently originally just made to kind of, I guess, you know, troll the author, if you will, while he was working on the world. However, ultimately it ended up just kind of manifesting into an uncontrollable, just kind of like plague that ended up breaking out after realizing that Nico, a real living being, and ended up within this kind of broken down world, and, well, because of this, the entity started freaking out. And especially within this run, after us as the player ended up leading Nico into different areas that the entity had no, you know, vision or understanding of, it ended up causing them to freak out even more, causing the current state of the world that it's in right now. And obviously, the entity is still absolutely just genuinely terrified, beating themselves down and thinking that they are just nothing but a flawed machine that is incapable of doing anything else other than messing up, and thinking to themselves that they just aren't tamed. This is when Nico pretty much realizes that the entity likely has been tamed this entire time. If taming is when you really care for something, and us as the player as well as Nico have been within this world and caring for it this entire time, then likely we've been taming the entity this entire time. We've been with this world and caring for it for so long that the entity just had to realize that it was truly tamed this whole time. It just wasn't sure of it yet. This is when the entity begins to mention that there used to be a happier ending to this entire story. There used to be an ending where apparently Nico would return the sun and be able to return home. However, the original ending ended up getting corrupted and there wasn't really anything that could be done about it. And the option of breaking the sun was merely just used as a workaround because the original ending ended up getting corrupted. Thankfully, due to the fact that the entity now realizes that they have been tamed this entire time, they're now able to at least piece together whatever is left within the original ending and kind of make a few little adjustments to it to kind of make it even more heartfelt. This is when the sun is returned to Nico. Nico is able to actually walk back down the catwalk, and we see possibly one of the best credit sequences that I've ever seen in a while. We get to say goodbye to all the different characters that we met along our journey, and they are understandably confused about where they are. Thankfully, none of them are dead. They're gonna be returned. It's fine. And then finally, we end up within the tower. And now we return the sun and see the world finally be put back together. After this, we're sent back into the room, and so is Nico. Nico begins to question what is going to happen to the world now that everything has been completed and now that this mission has finally been brought forth into its end. Thankfully, just like with any other story, the world, the people that are within it, everything, will never truly die unless we forget about it. As long as we remember it, it will still exist. And with this, Nico finally walks off screen. No, I mean literally, like Nico just literally walks right off the screen. And that was Oneshot. Honestly, even after a couple years since I've last played this game, I still hold the same exact opinion that I had before, which is that this is pretty much one of my favorite games of all time. Possibly one of the best ones I played in a while. And definitely tied up there with a lot of other games as just my top favorite, because honestly, this game, the story that it presents, is just honestly absolutely phenomenal. It's an extreme emotional roller coaster, yes, but it's one that's really worth the ride at the end of the day. And with that, with all of that out of the way, this has been Sandy, and have yourselves a nice day.